Hey everyone, welcome back. It's I, your host, Mr. Spicy, and today we're going to take a look at Limbo. Now, recently, besides getting the new Warframe Octavia, Limbo kind of got a rework, and it wasn't exactly a big, deal because for most part, most people still aren't very happy with Limbo. There's a lot of Limbo haters simply because when Limbo came out, he kind of didn't have the right fit for his abilities. He really wasn't placed right within the scheme of the game, and most people just ended up using him to troll other players. So Limbo got a very bad rap, and as a result was, I believe, voted the worst and least played frame of 2016. So obviously, Digital Extremes wanted to do a rework, and myself, as well as many other YouTubers, especially some of the top playing Warframe YouTubers that have 100,000 subscribers or more, love the build. In fact, and all the time I've been playing with Limbo since the rework, testing out my builds and working with everything, the only time I've run into people that did not like Limbo was when they didn't understand how Limbo had been rebuilt. Everybody that understood the rework and how Limbo's abilities now take effect loved Limbo and loved the fact that I was running Limbo and how I played Limbo, and it just made things a lot better. So to start with, Limbo got reworked on the passive. You no longer have to use an ability to send yourself in and out of the rift. Rift Walk has now become your passive. And as opposed to every other Warframe rolling when you hit the shift button while you're moving forward, or back spring or side spring, Limbo simply dashes. Now, when you dash, you will go into or out of the rift at that point. And of course, at that point, everything still takes effect the same as before. In the rift, you can't pick up items. You can't interact with consoles or anything. You also can't shoot enemies. They can't shoot you. It's the same as before. And of course, you do gain energy back while you're in the rift. Now, the first ability, Banish, is still the same. Pretty much you can banish an enemy into the rift or out of the rift. However, there's two key changes. First off, you can only use Banish on enemies that are in the exact same plane of existence as you. So if you're in the rift, you cannot target enemies that are not also in the rift. Basically, it is living up to its name of banishing. So you're banishing them to a different plane of existence than the one they're currently in. The other change is that Banish is now an AoE effect. So whatever enemy you target, Banish will affect several enemies around them as well. So you can use it not to banish just single enemies, but banish a group of enemies, which makes it a lot more effective at crowd control than it used to be. Now, Limbo's second ability, Stasis, takes the place of Rift Walk. Now that Rift Walk is your passive ability, Stasis does kind of what name says. It basically puts everything inside the rift into stasis. Any enemies or weapon fire is frozen. Now, this works for both enemies that are banished or under Cataclysm. And it will last as long as your duration will allow it to last. So the only effective weapon really during stasis while in the rift is your melee weapon. So it's very critical to have a good melee weapon build with Limbo now. Rift Surge got a bit of a rework too. Now, it kind of acts a lot like kind of a mixture of Nova's Molecular Prime and Saren's Spores. You target an enemy and it spreads out to them, from them to other enemies in a radial area. Basically, it just keeps going further out. I've targeted a single enemy and a group, and it spread through the entire area just because of the radius around it that it will spread. And it kind of charges them now, similar to the way Molecular Prime does. It doesn't slow them down, but what it does is if you use Rift Surge on an enemy that is in the rift, when they leave the rift, they will perform a radial banish. And what that means is they will banish everybody around them, including themselves, back into the rift. So it's a very good way to keep enemies locked into the rift, even if your Cataclysm closes or banish, you banish them back out of the rift and you pop the whole group back into the rift. It's a good way to control them and bring them back into the rift. And now it gives a lot more control. Now everything is kind of focusing on Limbo, controlling the Rift, and controlling time with Stasis. So you're going to be doing a lot more of keeping things in the Rift. Your fourth ability is, of course, still Cataclysm, and it's got to change as well. Now, it will open up the same big bubble. However, it does 2 stages of damage. The initial damage upon entering, and then a specialized enemy level adapted closing damage. What that is it scales with your enemy levels. So it takes 10% of all the shields and health of all enemies inside Cataclysm when it closes and deals that damage back out to all of them. So what this does is, in certain situations, it works really well, and others it doesn't. There's been a lot of videos I've come across of people sitting there trying to make the rework look overpowered by specifically targeting a group of ancient healers and killing them all with one go in Cataclysm, even though they're like level 145. The catch is, if you do that to the healers, they die instantly, but you do it to ancient disruptors, they don't all die. If you do it to level 145 or level 120 heavy gunners, doesn't matter, they're not going to die because their armor is so high, it's going to absorb that damage, so you're not going to be able to kill them. So Cataclysm is not an OP killing machine like some people want you to believe. There's also a change in that power strength does not affect Cataclysm's damage. You can't sit there with a max power strength on your build and increase the amount of damage. It is based to scale around your enemy level, so it's locked in at that percentage on the closing damage. So really now, Limbo doesn't take a lot of advantage from power strength. All right, so now that we've gone through all of the abilities, let's take a look at my build. Okay, so my first build is pretty much the main one I run. Once I tweaked this, I was running it, and it pretty much became the static go-to build for me, because now I do have some power strength in there for the damage off of Banish and the initial Cataclysm change when they shift to the Rift. But beyond that, I didn't worry about power strength. I mostly went for duration and range. Now, efficiency, I'm not popping Cataclysm in and out. If you want that, you're going to want to have to build for efficiency so you can keep casting Cataclysm over and over again. But you can see I kept for natural talent for speed on my casting, because I am going to be casting a lot, and Limbo does have very slow animations for his casting. And other than that, I maxed out for range. And then I've got quick thinking, because for the most part with Prime Flow, I have a very massive energy pool most of the time, and that helps to keep me alive long enough I can get into the Rift to protect myself. And then I went for high duration, so that Stasis and Cataclysm will last longer, allowing for better CC. Now, my second ability is just a slight tweak on that for Rift Torrent, and I increased my power strength simply to boost Rift Torrent, which now, what that does is you still get 30% extra damage for each enemy affected by the Rift, but it's only to Limbo. You don't spread that to anybody else. That's just going to affect your damage and your weapons. So that will help if you're going up against very high level enemies. And as you can see, this one has a smaller range, but works just as well for the efficiency and the duration. So you can work really well on control with this. You can do a lot of CC with this. But at the same time, it also is a very good build to go against maps where you're dealing with nullifiers, because a nullifier will unfortunately close your Cataclysm out if their bubble comes in contact with it. So my first build, having a very large Cataclysm range, works great for most cases, but against nullifiers, I will run into problems, which is why I have the second build as well. Though, like I said, for the most part, my first build is the go-to one that I use. All right, now moving on, there's a lot of interesting weapons you can use. Again, because of Stasis, if you're going to use Stasis a lot, your melee weapons are going to be the main ones. Now, anything that's high damage, a good Adarax build, Galatine Prime, things like that work really well. Though, the ones I've found that I like the best are the Urakta Dark Dagger, because of the way you get the higher damage kills, especially if you can get behind them and do damage. And of course, my build is built around radiation procs, so that helps me do a lot more damage. My personal favorite is Haruto, which we got with Nidus. Now, if you're not familiar with this, this is a fist-based melee weapon that does heal us per hit with it. The big part about the one that I like is high critical chance, as well as the high critical damage and the critical multiplier. That you're getting with it. You're getting with my build that I've got, I get a lot of red crits, and I am able to sit there and take down, high level heavy gunners that are frozen with it, no problem. Now, beyond that, for primary and secondary weapons, anything that's high damage or relies on a good projectile placement works really well. My personal preferences are Tigress Prime, because you can line up that nice headshot and just sit there and line them all up. Or Soma Prime, because once you empty basically a clip into the head of a high-level heavy gunner and then in Stasis, you get a crit pretty much guaranteed if you build with a high crit build for that. And as far as secondary weapons, my personal favorite is Static Core, just because I love the way it looks when I am using it. Though anything like Spyro Prime, Hiko Prime, Pox, those are also good ones. I especially like Pox because you can spread your cloud of infection around a bit with it. So, anything like that for your primary and secondary work really well with this. But again, if you're using Stasis a lot, your melee weapons are going to be king on that. And you're definitely going to want to make sure your squad mates know that they need good melee weapons as well if they're playing with you, because apparently some people don't understand that they need to have a good melee weapon at times, because I've dealt with a few people that did that while I was playing Limbo. But overall, Limbo has gotten a very good rework. I really love the way Limbo plays now. And in my opinion, Limbo is one of the best CC frames out there right now. Hate me if you like. I don't care. I can prove it, because good example of that is on excavation missions, especially those like Hurricane on Pluto. Because of my higher duration, I can use Cataclysm and Stasis to lock down one of the excavators for a little over 40 seconds, which means once it's fully powered and it reaches that 40-second mark, I can lock it down and everybody can leave and go to the next excavator, and it doesn't have to be worried about, because there's no nullifiers on that map and nothing's going to be able to touch it and destroy that excavator. At the same time, I can then also use Banish on groups of enemies around a second excavator and lock them down as well to where that one's protected. So I've been able to sit there on Hurricane and help a group run 3 excavators at a time, where I was managing 2 of them at any given time, keeping one protected and locking down another one area until it got to that 40-second mark, and then I locked it down with Cataclysm and Stasis and moved on. And we were able to sit there and keep that rolling very easily. So Limbo is a very good CC frame if you have someone playing Limbo well and uses Limbo correctly. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with a troll again. There's a lot of people taking advantage of Stasis and trolling people by popping up Cataclysm and locking all your weapons so you can't shoot anything and kill anything. But again, like I said, every time I've run into somebody, I've played with another person on the game since the rework, the people who knew how Limbo was reworked and how the abilities tied together now, loved it. The only people that didn't like Limbo were the ones that ended up proving they did not understand how Limbo had changed. So, as I said, I feel Limbo is a very good frame now, a very well-balanced frame, and because of Cataclysm's change, can scale really well into late game now. But, that's my opinion. These are my builds. Play how you want. If you don't like Limbo, don't play Limbo. But if you want to try Limbo out now, which I've heard a lot of people saying they really want to since this rework, please check them out and really give them a try and understand how the abilities integrate together, because DE is doing a lot of focus now on synergy between the abilities for all the Warframes. It won't surprise me if some other Warframes get reworked again soon to emphasize that synergy again. But thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, hit that like button. Be sure to hit subscribe to keep up with all my content. I'm posting a lot of content right now. I'm keeping everything going, steadily 5 days a week. As always, leave a comment. Let me know what you like, what you didn't like. If you got any build suggestions, let me hear that. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.